On the topic, yeah, because I think that it's necessary, right? To probe the actual structure of the question, because it says, are ethno-nationalists and Pan-Africans two sides of the same coin? Yeah. Now, the first out thing I want to say is that technically speaking, Pan-Africans is not the term. The plural term for people that adhere to the ideology of Pan-Africanism is Pan-Afrikanist. Yeah, people say Pan-Africans a lot, and I don't know where that comes in, but yeah, it's technically speaking, it's Pan-Africanist. It's not a major point, but it's just just for people that are not necessarily familiar. That's generally speaking as referred to. But you've got ethno-nationalism juxtaposed with Pan-Africanism, and I'm not sure that's a viable comparison. I think what it really should say, or is what it should do, is identify the form of ethno-nationalism, if that makes sense. Because I don't think there's one type of ethno-nationalism. So many, right, let me ask the panel then. If I was to say, is what's it called? China an ethno-nationalist state? What would you say?
So you said if you say, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you said if you say is China an
no? Yeah. I'm making a statement. China is an ethno-nationalist state. Agree or disagree?
I would kind of be inclined to agree, and I also don't think that Pan-African and ethno.
Hello. Is there something wrong with you?
Whatever is called are the same thing.
There's like a fucking 3-minute period where no one chose to answer the question. I started answering the question and then you started speaking. Fucking hell, help me out,
bro. Don't get too upset, bro. Come on.
I'm not upset, but help me out. How did that make sense? Why didn't you just respond to it?
Oh, bro, like, you was taking long in it. I thought, let me answer.
What? All right, go on.
You paused for breath in the middle of your sentence, James.
You did as well. Thank you. Let's not lie about this.
Yeah, can we just continue with the conversation, please? Yeah, whatever. James, go on, continue.
Yeah, I mean, there's multiple ethnic groups within China, right? That's one of the reasons why people are complaining about the Chinese government. We bring to mind not only that, but like what's the people that are upset? Taiwan, Tibet, all these different regions. Like,
it's an interesting thing that you said, yeah. So there's many different ethnic groups in China, but do the Chinese perceive themselves as generally speaking, or is there a high sentiment of we are one people in China among the Chinese?
I mean, clearly there's not a sentiment amongst the ones that feel disenfranchised. Obviously,
maybe not. Yeah. So let's say that
the majority.
Yes, there is a very high sentiment on to all the Chinese people I've spoken to on this issue, because you know that this is the issue I'm always on.
I agree.
Whenever I have conversations with them about race and ethnicity, I find that the Chinese almost their race or their ethnicity is almost their religion. They're very serious.
Now let me ask you this. So let's continuing from this train of thought, yeah, because both of you have said interesting things. There's more than one ethnicity in China. There's also, technically speaking, or based upon how things are generally speaking identified, there is one. People often say there is more than one ethnic group in Africa.
Yeah.
So if there is more than one ethnic group in Africa, is Pan-Africanism ethno-nationalism?
No, I think so. I think what I would okay, if I was to argue for the proposition, yeah, so that ethno-nationalists and Pan-Africans are two sides of the same coin, I would say the only real division, how can I put it? No, as in, so I take your point. Let me just actually expound upon your point, and then maybe that helped me make my point clearer to myself. Yeah, your point is essentially that an advocate for ethno-nationalism could sort of contradict a sort of a Pan-Africanist's point of view, because a Pan-Africanist point of view is saying let's unify all the ethnic groups, whereas the ethno-nationalist is advocating for division amongst all ethnic groups. Right? Is that pretty much your argument?
No, that's not the point I'm making, actually. The point I'm actually making is the fact that we would need to define the terms. Yeah, that's the essential point I'm making. So in the sense of the fact that ethno-nationalism, yeah, is a umbrella term that could relate to different schools of thought depending on what is referred to as an ethnicity. Yeah.
So can you not get the same thing within the Pan-African social?
Yeah, I'm not holding.
No, listen to what I'm saying, please.
Check out 1 second quickly. But then, if you don't have any reason why there would be a contradiction, then so if the definition was broader, let's say the ethno-nationalist group was like racial, let's say, right? They call themselves ethno-nationalists, but they believe that race and ethnicity is synonymous. And you say that you are equally fighting for the liberation of black peoples across the world, or black betterment, or like one of these sort of phrases, right, to describe your movement. Then why wouldn't they be sort of symbiotic?
Because it's very simple. The ethno-nationalism, as it manifests among one ethnicity, may not be based upon the same foundation of the ethno-nationalism of another ethnicity, except for the fact that they're speaking or they're advocating upon behalf of their ethnicity. So if we're looking at that,
you make that simple.
Isn't that a key?
Hold on.
Sir, if I can ask,
ideologies
isn't that a key part to being a Pan-African and an ethno-nationalist? It's not something that you can say is a minute part. Both want repatriation of the individuals from their landmass to come back to where they are, to increase their population and keep the same.
Well, hold on 1 second. This is what I don't understand why you said that's not what you're saying. So listen. I'm saying if you keep being non-specific about definitions,
I'm not being non-specific.
Hold on.
I'm not being
non-specific. What I'm saying. Listen, you are a Pan-Africanist, right? You are a Pan-Africanist, right?
James. Stop for a second, yeah? You don't have to control the conversation, all right? Just let me say what I'm saying and you might understand it, yeah? Listen, the term ethno-nationalism, right? The term ethno-nationalism, yeah, is non-specific is what I'm saying. So I'm saying in order to answer this question, we would have to specify what form or forms of ethno-nationalism we are referring to. Because
how is it non-specific?
Because I'm suggesting, 1 second, similarities notwithstanding, doesn't make one form of ethno-nationalism exactly the same as the other, because their motivations and their primary ideology beyond just basing it around a sense of peoplehood might be quite different. Let me give you an example.
So that's a great point, Chaka. Great point.
What's it called? Let me give you an example. Yeah, white nationalism, yeah, is often juxtaposed with black nationalism. What they have in common is that one purports to be advocating on behalf of people that are considered to be white, and the other advocates on behalf of people that are considered to be black. But when you look at the history of white nationalism, how it develops, and you look at the history of black nationalism, how it develops, you find many stark divergences, yeah, among them. So white nationalists, yeah, the activities or the implementation of white nationalism, it often results in attacks against people that are not white, yeah, preemptive attacks, offensive attacks against people that are non-white, the blanket denigration of said peoples, and in some instances their dehumanization. Yeah, black nationalism comes about in order to protect black people from the manifestation of white nationalism. It doesn't come about as in order to oppress white people or to denigrate white people, or in order I get the point. I get the point. I 100% get the point. I understand. What I'm saying to you is the proposition. There's a proposition on the table. I imagine, based upon that sort of inference, yeah, you've drawn from the differences between the two nationalist parties, yeah, you would say then that there's an incorrect statement. No, that ethno-nationalists and Pan-Africanists are not two sides of the same coin. This would be your argument, correct? No, I'm saying that it would depend on which form of ethno-nationalism is being referred to. So there may be some...
but then going back to the earlier point, then hold on, and going back to the earlier point, this is my point. I'm saying, so then you could conceive of there being examples of different forms of different definitions of ethno-nationalists being synonymous with Pan-African. Sorry, not synonymous. I apologize.
Related to.
Having very similar principles as Pan-Africanists.
I can conceive of it. Yes.
Right. Okay. And then I would. This is where I would enter the discussion. I would say your argumentation. So let's say the ultimate cause, right, of this divergence is exactly the same. Is almost identical, right? I would say you lean on a lot of the same sort of philosophical principles, the political philosophies, and not only that, but the same sort of emotive argumentation, the demonizing, othering people. You also rely heavily upon this. I'm not saying it's not a fact. Let me just be clear. Everything I've said is not that it's not true, that everything's untrue. I'm just saying, but there are similarities in that. Also, the defining oneself as a victim of, and I'm again not saying that no one is a victim here. I'm saying defining oneself as a victim, and then also the sort of the importance placed on these usually artificially manufactured identities. I'd say all of those are similarities that I'd say for the vast majority of all of the definitions of ethno-nationalism and all of the sort of iterations of Pan-Africanism and Pan-Afrikanists that exist. I'd say you rely heavily on the same principles.
Do you consider, in fact, let's actually, no, do you consider Western civilization, yeah, an ethno-nationalist construct?
At points it may have been, yeah. At different points. I know it's a bit of a broad.
Different points.
Yeah, at points it may have been. Like let's say 19th century, 20th century, I'd say, yeah, definitely.
So it's not today, yeah? It's not today.
To a degree, yeah, but I mean, as in, I'd say that
put a percentage on that degree.
Not as much as in the 19th and 20th. Is that fair? Can I say that?
I understand the words that are coming out of your mouth. I'm saying to what degree though. So give me a percentage.
I'm sorry, I'm not qualified to make a statement like that.
But it just so happens that the Western axis, yeah, is dominated literally by people that by nations that and the culture and the development, and it's defined by the development of people that are the children of Western Europe, basically exclusively.
Is Western Europe an ethnic group though?
That's the point I'm trying to. That's what I'm saying to you. I'm asking you the question: would you consider it to be an ethno-nationalist ideology?
And that's what I'm saying. I'm with you. Like there are multiple definitions for the term ethno-nationalism. I wouldn't disagree with that. So, what I would say is, what my point is, and the reason that, like, the first things were questions, right? Then I made a statement, a claim, if you like, yeah. And that is to say that all of these different iterations of ethno-nationalism and Pan-Africanism rely on, in my opinion, similar core principles. Not that doesn't vitiate any of the actual principles. So that doesn't mean to say that if Black nationalists say we are victims of white oppression, that doesn't mean they're not actually victims of white oppression. It just means that when white nationalists or the KKK saying our culture is being eroded by Black people, and actually, in fact, we are the victims.
Well, I would argue
I'm saying it's very similar principles. This is what
I would argue that there's similarities between practically every political ideology ever known to human creation, right?
That's very true as well. Very true. Shaka, let me time in quickly, please.
Yeah, but these are meant to be diametrically opposed. That's the argument. That's the real argument here.
The issue of victimhood.
Hold on. Can you just acknowledge that? But these are meant to be opposed. This is what I'm saying. Why it is important to say there are clear similarities. You could say if there's two different languages, right? You could say if there's two different languages, they're both different types of sort of human communication. Therefore, there's a similarity. And I'm saying, yeah. But if we're arguing that these two languages are opposed, then if we see a pattern of similar principles amongst both languages, be it, I don't know, what do you call it, roots, etymological roots, phonetic, whatever, yeah, then you can say, actually, no, then they're probably not as opposed as they think. And that's what the question is essentially trying to illuminate. Saying,
Shakara, 1 second, let me time in, please. Like, I just want to point out something here. Like, I totally agree with what you said, Shakara. Even though I don't usually agree with everything you say, on this occasion, I'm inclined to agree with everything you said. And also, I just want to put out there that when I heard about this ethno-nationalism, it had a surprising resemblance to something that I read about that in history, the class system, and, you know, ethnic cleansing. It had a very, very similar tone to it. And I don't think that Pan-African has any tones of class system or ethnic cleansing attached to it. So I'd say they're two completely different things. And this is just, you know, been this is information has been misinterpreted by James Jones.
So
We
but
can
Shifa, with
probe.
that statement, hold on one second. With that statement, you're saying that ethno-nationalists believe in ethnically cleansing people. I'm sure not all of them do.
Yeah, I wouldn't
That's
say
a
all.
broad
I'm not.
brush.
No, wait, I'm not gonna say all. I'm just, like I said, it just had tones of.
Raheem,
When I
you're
say,
responsible now. Raheem,
when
you're
I say, hold on, when I say tones of, yeah, I mean, you know, there are
now you're
definite.
responsible. Just remember, Bob, I keep telling you these things. I keep
There are
telling you
definite.
responsible.
There are definite tones of racism in here, in this ethno-nationalism business. There's definitely tones of the ancient class system, which existed in Europe for many years, where, you know, they would promote your class as being higher for not mixing with other ethnic groups, X, Y, Z. And I don't see the same thing in Pan-Africanism. Pan-Africanism to me, you know, like, was something completely different when I jumped on, because I didn't really understand it. I said, you know what, let me do a little bit of research while I'm online. I Googled it a little bit, and I still don't see any of these elements involved in it. And, you know, I think that it would be a misconception. It would be it was so 1 second. I'd say it would be a misconception to say there's any connection between the two.
Yeah, that's a great point. But so Shaka,
So in relation to 1 second, please. In relation to the because we can actually probe and I'm going to use a word that I don't usually use, but for the sake of the conversation, we can actually probe objectively the claims made within different schools of thought, yeah, to identify or substantiate their reality, if that makes sense. The issue is, however,
make sense.
it does make sense in the sense of the fact that just because using the idea of victimhood, for example, yeah, and I'm going to challenge that in a second, but using your words for a second, the idea that both claim to be victims, we can actually analyze the levels of victimhood that actually exist among, you know what I'm saying, the groups that are making these claims, to see which is actually borne out to be true or false.
Yeah, but that's not the claim. The claim is one a liar. No, but hold on, just to be clear. The claim, and I don't know why, I feel like I left that clause in there. I sort of attached the caveat because I literally said it's not actually about what's true or not. It's about, are these movements similar? Like, is there points? And I was about to give you an example when you said let me finish. Yeah, I was about to give you an example of the rate, like when every time I engage with you on this race realism and point, I say, do you not see how you make the argument for the opposition? And you always say, no, it's not. It's, you know, it's essentially it's parallel to that, right? Like, I'm like, no, but because you guys both are bound by this understanding of, like, for instance, you dismiss modern scientific breakthrough as being sort of some.
No, I don't dismiss it, bro.
Hold on. You said no, you did, but you, bruv, can I finish? Yeah. You literally said on many occasions that, oh, it's very convenient that now white people are saying X, right? When before they were saying Y. Right? So even if it's true, guess what? So please. Guess who else says that? Guess who else says that often on these panels?
But guess who else says that Western culture is superior to all other cultures on the planet? Right, so just because you say something,
not listen to what I'm saying. I don't mind. You're doing this.
Big up, Shakara. Big up.
You're doing this now. Like, just relax for 1 second. Listen to what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, there is a reason, right, that you both have the exact same view of scientific information. And I'm not necessarily saying that, like, I'm not a scientist, right? I can't fact check every single statement. Every single reference I make, I can't fact check it with my own sort of knowledge on the subject. But I'm saying, let's say that is the consensus. The scientific consensus is sort of X conclusion. You've got you on one side saying, no, I want to use the previous definition or taxonomical categorization of my group, yeah? And I believe this hold on, please. I believe this contemporary one it serves some bias, right? Serves some bias, and it serves my people negatively. They're saying the exact same thing on the other end, exactly. And if we were to do what you did, which is, let's check the objective standard of proof. Let's use some objective standard to verify which of these claims is true or not, right? We would say that, let's say the scientific consensus is upheld or affirmed, then both of you would be incorrect. But what would make then, right? What would make you both come to the same conclusion, right? Based upon the same, usually emotional reasons. because there is obviously deeper seated similarities amongst your group.
You're fundamentally incorrect. First of all, I have never challenged whether what the science says is true. Yeah, I have some questions. Yeah, and I've said that I don't think it's completely implausible to suggest that there is some biological reality for differences among human beings. That's what I've said. The different theories of race, I've never actually challenged them. The fact of the matter is, however, what I have challenged is the political ramifications of the statement. I have said that race was everything to the Western world when it suited their agenda, and now race should be dismantled by the Western world because it now suits their agenda to do so. So to me, the reality scientifically of race or not is neither belies the system, yes, of Western white supremacy as it has been imposed on the rest of the world. So dismantling the theory of race does not strike a blow, evidently, based upon the world, how the world is run right now, against the imposition of the superiority of people that have classed themselves as white. That is the point that I've made. And so if one is confusing that with sanctioning the theories of race realism, one is confused. But again, even if my personal conviction was to say that race is
the other day,
one second, please. No, James, I invite you to all the previous conversations that we've had on this subject, and you will see that I've made that point that I've just made consistently in various different ways.
Yeah, but
it doesn't matter. You know why? It doesn't matter. You know why? Because even if I personally, Tafazwa Shakara Bandaka, believes that race is a biological reality, even if I do, that is not what Pan-Africanism is necessarily based on.
I know, but you hold on, Shaka, quickly. You're just arguing.
We don't have to go down that road because that's not the point.
I know, but can I just be clear that I'm not wrong? You were just arguing for it the other day. The other day when I said it was arbitrary and I said skin color, whatever, and you said no, that it is biological. You fundamentally disagreed with me.
James, I said that there are other identifiers. Hold on. I said that there are other identifiers that people could use or would use to identify your ethnicity. Yes, that's what I said. This is not a blanket sanctioning of race realism. And even if I'm wrong, that's not a blanket sanctioning of race realism, right? That's not it. So it's a totally different thing. You've misunderstood me.
I mean,
we don't have to get bogged down in this point. You know why? Because it's not relevant to the conversation.
It is an example I'm using. Of course, it is an example I'm using.
Race realism, as it stands right about now, because ethnicity is not necessarily synonymous with race, and that's not the point that I'm probing at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with that. Yeah.
Right. So the point is, that if we're going to compare different forms of what we call ethno-nationalism, saying that there are similarities is not sufficient. We can say, and the question, by the way, is: are they two sides of the same coin?
Why not sufficient? Why is it not sufficient?
Because, for example, capitalism and socialism are said to be opposites, right? You can identify similarities.
I'd say communism most likely, but
either way, you can identify similarities among them. Yeah.
Now what though? Give me an example.
So, for example, capitalism comes into formation under a monarchy. Yeah. What's it called? That's
not a fact, though. That's not a fact.
It is a fact, bro. It is a fact.
No, wait. You're saying that. Hold on, wait. You're saying that it did historically, or you're saying that it must?
No, it not that it must, but it did.
Because capitalism principally is saying no sort of government / monarchic involvement in a free market. That's the idea behind it. So actually,
you're aware of that?
Hold on. Any kind of overarching government structure is not a prerequisite or is a necessary condition for capitalism. Whereas for socialism, to a degree, the people, an organization of people, must be in place to, if you like, divide the nation's wealth or there are
no political economic systems that don't require specific organizations of people. None. All of them do, right?
So that's what you're saying. No, but so you're saying, so ultimately are Pan-Africanists and ethno-nationalists the same? Well, they're both humans, therefore that's the similarity. That's the comparison.
No. What I'm saying is, that to identify whether they're two sides of the same coin or not. So just because the essential point I'm making is, just because you advocate on behalf of your people and I've advocate on behalf of my people, doesn't mean our overall principles and values and our goals are the same. Right? It's related to say that.
Can I,
So
Wait,
it's
but hold on, but stop
it's
trying to muddy the waters. We're trying to establish if they are. So we're
ridiculous.
saying that if you go, hold on. But can I,
one second. Let me finish my statement. To use the very obvious example, yeah, the people them nobody would make the argument that the Nazis and the Jews who are fighting for, on behalf of Jewish people were the same or two sides of the same coin.
That is a stupid example, though. That's an absolutely
that doesn't make sense. Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah,
Like,
every,
hold
Hold on.
Reem, no, I will let you. I swear to God, Reem,
James,
it's not
1
challenge.
second. Because
No
what
one's gonna have
happened
to respond to what I'm
anyway
saying.
is the conversation I was having with Lady B got derailed.
They have a right
to chip into this new conversation because there's a panel. It's not just the two of them. Yeah.
I know. So let me. Can I say one thing, Raheem?
Because
Hey, Raheem,
a suggestion
I get your
maybe
point.
actually specifically
Yes,
say what the differences
Raheem,
are,
Raheem, one
rather
second,
than
please.
trying to find these
I beg you,
similarities that you keep
Yeah.
going against.
I beg you. 1 second. I just want to say this one thing really quickly. What one would have to do, right, if you wanted to do an honest appraisal of the connections or similarities these two things share, is to say based upon other political ideologies. So now we take 100 political ideologies and we say what are the individual properties, the commonalities amongst all of these, and we say which ones share the most similarity and which ones are completely dissimilar to one another. Given that the general perspective is that these two ideologies are somewhat opposed to one another, right? Given that they usually represent and benefit two different groups, diametrically opposed, one would argue, groups. We should say, all right, let's compare that. Not just say, one political ideology, other political ideology, therefore similar. This one's similar. No, don't trivialize it. Look for what other political ideology would you say is a better example or is an example of having a requisite amount of dissimilarity. That's what you'd have to do.
Can I ask you a question? And this is for the whole panel, right? So I'm not asking James. Name me a political ideology that does not claim or purport or was not developed to advocate on behalf of a particular group of people.
There isn't one, Shakara.
But that's different, isn't it?
Like, bro,
Hold on, 1 second.
Answer my question,
man.
There isn't one, Shakara. There's not the Shakara. There isn't one. They're going to try and talk around it.
So
Shakara just answered, there is not one Shakara. It doesn't exist.
Right. The difference being is one goes for the ethnicity of the people, and one is those who are politically ideologically, I can't speak, who are politically and ideologically the same. So when it comes down to ethnos and Pan-Africans have a core belief of doing good for the people of that ethnicity and of that area of the world that they live in. So in that sense, you two are the same.
Yeah.
I don't know about that one, Raheem. I think Shakara might be right here. And Shakara, I honestly believe, Shakara, you're wasting your energy because they're just going to keep talking around it. You asked a very specific question, and the answer to your question is no. There is no ideology that does not support the ideals of a particular people.
Speaking it, right? I'm gonna suggest that you're wrong, Raheem. Yeah. There are many socialism claims to advocate on behalf of the working class. There are many working class people that are not socialists.
Not really.
What's it called? So again,
it's not exclusive to the working class.
I said it claims to advocate on behalf of the working class. That's the socialist ideology was developed, in order to advocate upon the laboring classes of the society. Yeah,
right. But the socialists, the socialist party.
One second, please. As opposed to the interests of the landed gentry. Yeah. So these are. So I'm saying to you that there are political. Capitalism comes into formation for a number of different reasons, and part of it is to put the more political power in the hands of the landed gentry and merchant class as opposed to the aristocracy. Right. So all of these political ideologies claim to be advocating on behalf of particular groups of people. Yeah. So the fact that and I'm not denying the fact that if you look different forms of whatever form of ethno-nationalism we're referring to, claims to advocate on behalf of a people group that is considered to be ancestrally and culturally related to itself. That is a fact. Yeah, but I'm saying that similarity, yeah, or that basis upon the groups that they have identified doesn't make their ideology the same. Yeah, it just means that they're advocating on behalf of their people groups. So
why don't you want to hear? I don't understand why you don't want to hear. Like, so there's a lot you don't agree, right? I asked you earlier, do you agree? You didn't want to answer. You said, "Oh, there's varying definitions, right?" People are making cases to you based upon definitions that they believe. I don't actually agree with Raheem's one. I'll be honest, but the one I mean, listen, there is a sort of. We've had many conversations on this topic, and a lot of the facts that I bring to you, or the positions that I've heard you relate to me historically, I've sort of agglomerated them and I've given them to you, and you seem to disagree with them. But I could build a case, right, for why it's the case. The fact that you don't reject it outright, right? Like you were given the opportunity, you don't. Means I don't know why you're so hell bent on going. Well, you know what? Any common property that's presented to me, I could just say everything else is a common property, therefore I don't have to accept it. Well, then you either reject the claim in principle. And if you do not, then you should probably be more quiet then.
James,
Hold on, please. I'm still talking. Given the fact that you were talking about people dictating the discussion, right? You're speaking a lot of you don't know then, basically, because you're saying, I can't say it's wrong. I can't say that the comparison is wrong, but I can also say that common principles, as far as I'm aware, right, are just too broad and non-specific. So be quiet and let somebody explain to you what they
So hold on. So can I say something?
Like,
1 second.
You're talking at length.
1 second. If I can say something quickly.
I don't know.
Yeah. So you gave the example of socialism being for the working class, etc., etc., etc. That isn't specific to an individual's or a group of individuals within an ethnic cluster. But if they were an ethnic socialist, then they would be. These are where the similarities between Pan-Africanism, well, in my opinion, these are where the similarities between Pan-Africanism and ethnots are, because you're both after an individual cluster of ethnicities and what you want best for that individual. Yes, granted, you were right in saying about how socialism is for the working class, but it's not down to a specific niche market. It goes working class, and working class is everybody. Whereas ethnots are for the ethnicity.
So the only difference
Pan-Africans are for the African and African diaspora.
So the only difference is that the identity, that the key identifier of the group is different. That's the only difference there. The actual point that I was making, and I think it's very important to actually tune into what I'm saying rather than what you want to focus on, is the fact that in order to identify the validity and the function of these ideologies in the real world, we would have to do more than say, well, this people group is this ideology is based upon the advocating on behalf of a people group based upon ethnicity. So is that one. Therefore, they're two sides of the same coin. Yeah, that's simplistic. It's overly simplistic. I'm saying that one would have to look at in real terms how the ideology comes about. What are the goals as stated by the people who are advocating on behalf of their people group? Yes, and then make an assessment. So using 1 second, using James's example. 1 second, please.
Because you have a tendency. Hold on.
1 second, please.
I love you, but you have a tendency to carry on, and then there'll be
everybody
very
said
vital
that.
points.
When James was speaking, nobody said it. I'd like to finish saying what I would
like to address and cannot, because it's already gone so far past. So you've just said about specific characteristics. Can we agree in Pan-Africanism you want the betterment of black people from the diaspora, correct?
No, the betterment of black people globally, not just from the diaspora.
Yes, but they are the diaspora because you believe that they will come from Africa and no longer a part of it.
Sorry, I'm differentiating. When you say diaspora, it could suggest, and I'm not saying that's what you're saying, but I'm being careful about how I'm answering the question, because it could suggest that we're only speaking about black people that are not on the continent of Africa. That is not the case.
So I'm saying those who are on the continent and those who are off the continent.
Yes, that would be correct.
An ethnat will want the betterment of a English white person who is on the continent and not on the continent. They're expats. They're gonna
Right.
want they're gonna want them to be in the best positions. What are the key differences? And this is what I was trying to ask earlier. What would you say are the key differences?
But I've already
Rather
got
than
that.
us looking at the similarities, what are the key differences between yourselves as Pan-Africans and them on the other side as ethnats?
So if you had allowed me to finish, you would have got the answer to that question. And I've actually already answered that question to some degree, right? So when we're talking about how white nationalism comes into being, or ethno-nationalism as developed by European peoples, we can see that it often results in offensive and oppressive measures against other groups of people on the planet, right? And so their bodies are attacked, but also their cultures, their civilizations, and their nations are attacked and destroyed. And so for said peoples, reconstituting themselves as a group, that some people might define as ethnicity, becomes a necessity for them. Reaffirming their culture becomes a necessity for them, and reconstituting their nationhood becomes a necessity for them. The fact that each is advocating on behalf of their individual group is a fact, but one is based upon fundamentally different ideals than the other, and I think it does an injustice. And it's not even fundamentally. One second, it's not even fundamentally honest to conflate the two. You know what I'm saying? It's not even. It's not even. It's and I'm gonna use a really crude example. It's like saying, "Man tried to stab me, so me stab the man." Therefore, and we were both advocating on behalf of our individual self. Therefore, we were coming from the same place. It's joke business.
Yeah, Raheem. Sorry,
Yeah.
Shaka. Can I ask a quick question? Sorry, Bab. Yeah. Maybe ask a quick question. Yeah. If the continent of Africa didn't have its recent history, in terms of colonization, slavery, etc., etc., do you think there would be a need for Pan-Africanism?
Yes.
You do. Why?
Because ethnats and Pan-Africans and any form of nationalism, I believe it all stems from a tribalistic mindset, and humans can't help but to be tribalistic. So I believe that it would have happened irrespective. It may not have been known as Pan-Africanism. It may be known as just Africanism. It could have been known as whatever, but I do believe it would have happened irrespective.
Right. Okay. So let me try a different way.
I would tend to agree with that to some degree, and that's actually Pan-African ideology. Many people that would date the actual origins of Pan-Africanism all the way back to the unification of Upper and Lower Kemet, and the fact that people tend to go from smaller group aggregates to large group aggregates. So if I quote Kwame Ture, he said that many people think that Pan-Africanism was created because of colonialism, and it's not exactly true. He said it would be true to say that Pan-Africanism responded to colonialism, but it wasn't created solely because of it. Because prior to the colonial and enslavement process, Africans were developing larger group aggregate formations in terms of nationhood and so on and so forth that went across so-called tribal distinctions.
All right, then, cool. So, all right, then, it might be very crude, but in terms of the comparison, because we're talking about ethno-nats and Pan-Africanism, right? So, all right, then, Raheem. So, let me ask you, what is the need for ethno-nats?
Hold on, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry, Raheem, before you answer, can I clarify? Nine, when you say ethno-nats, are you talking about white ethnats?
Whatever it is in the description, I'm talking about them.
That's what I would say. We have to specify exactly who we're talking about. I don't necessarily think.
But I'm of the opinion, like, that's why I tried to be clear with you in the beginning. That's why I don't know, man. You're always so resistant to when I try to be very clear and direct to things. You always seem to you're always hesitant to accept this sort of what I offer, right? But I'm saying, let's say we can work with any model. We can all create a model and work with that model. I'm interested to hear your models in which you see them as still maintaining that opposition. I'm interested to hear that, right? Or how they're incompatible. The two models are incompatible. But I would say a lot of these people that we hear speak now, while it may be referred to as ethno-nationalism, they're talking about Europeans, like the what's his face, El Rondo, Legolas.
White people. Yeah.
Yeah, right. They're talking about Europeans and specific, like Western Europeans and that, right? Like they're not.
Well,
really...
there's one guy who speaks specifically about English folk. Like he's on some. I can't remember.
Yeah,
his name,
Liam.
Yeah, they're all different types.
Liam.
They're all different types, right? Yeah. Gay Liam. The point I'm trying to make is, right, those people do sound awfully similar to a lot of the arguments that are being made. And when I say that, for instance, they always refer to some kind of Marx power dynamic and dialectic.
Yeah, because they're organized.
Right. But that's one example. Again, I'm not questioning the sort of verity of any claim. I'm just saying the similarity in principle and approach, right? Like how they're viewing how they view a sort of a specific phenomena, an outcome, whatever, right? So the constant reference.
How
to
important is the verity of the claim, though?
Rejection. Say again.
How important, in terms of analyzing this specific question, is the verity of the claim?
But it's not, and I'll give you an example, right? Because
it's
if
fundamental.
No, hold on. Wait. Please. No. But hold on. But bruv, please, man. Yeah, I did you. Sorry, you did take ages to answer a question. If you want to speak, though, you can speak. Go on. If you want to, go on. I waited for you to answer.
To be honest, man didn't think he was there, bro. Man didn't think he was there, bro.
Yeah, your mic got working. Huh?
I said, let's be sincere. You interrupted, and I need to ask me a question. And
yeah, no, I swear down. I wait, brother. Sorry, you're right. Go on. You'd speak. Your mic is low, by the way, as well. But go on.
Yeah, it's my phone, man. It's my phone. No,
I swear, I didn't think you were there, though. I didn't try to interrupt you, honestly. But
yeah, no, it's cool. It's cool. Nanifa.
Yes, Bob.
Yeah, when you're talking about as Shaka said, when you're talking about the ethnats, you're talking about European ethnats.
I believe so. I believe when I hear the word ethnats, I what comes up in my mind is yes, white, whatever. Yeah, I've not heard any black people sort of talk about, not even Hector. But go on.
Oh, fuck it up. And in terms of that, I just think it's because we are the ones who made them feel like they needed to galvanize. That's why you don't really get, or didn't have at that period in time when it started, a black ethnats. You don't really get that. I think you do have a rise in that.
Oh, wait. Let me hear that again. Did you say that we are the ones that got them to galvanize?
Yeah, that's what I believe.
Oh, talk to me, Raheem. Talk to me.
So as with what Shaka said earlier, and James, I think the other side of the coin felt threatened that we were infringing upon their cultural space.
Black people. Black people. 100%. Nah, so, not us,
but I'm just explaining.
Maybe I can help.
I think can be the other side of the coin. Us, the other side of the coin would probably think.
Do you know how many black? Hold on.
Sis,
I know, but let's give and take. Do you know how many black people are in Britain or in Europe as a whole?
In England, something it's like 10% of the population or 11% of the population. So 11%.
Raheem Nine's holding a sec, yeah. Yo, Raheem Nine's holding a sec, yeah. 10-10. So 10-10.
2020.
That's 2020, bro. He halved himself. You know what I mean? He's half of what he was.
Yeah. We just obviously, if he's not talking though, someone else wants to join. Other people want to join the panel as well, innit? So if man's not going to be talking, that need to make some space, innit?
You don't back James on G Block. You actually lost your mind. Seriously. I like that, Shaka.
James, you're an idiot. What's it called? What's it? Let me say this here. Can I ask a question, right? Is everybody familiar with the white man's burden? The concept of the white man's burden, yeah? Rudyard Kipling, yeah? Which basically is the ideology that white people were burdened, with this responsibility of going around the world on a civilizing mission, right? And all kinds of different things, right? A lot of these things. Is that not ethno-nationalism?
Yeah,
not really.
To a degree.
I don't know. Maybe.
Of course, it's ethno-nationalism. What are you talking about? It's white nationalism at its finest, right? So the point I'm making when I say that, right, is that the and by the way, sorry. Also, when the Europeans, the French, the British, the Spanish, the Portuguese, the Belgians, the British, and so on and so forth, the Italians and collaborated, in order to colonize the rest of the world. Were these not acts manifestly of white nationalism?
So white nationalism is different to ethno-nationalism.
No, but I would accept it. I would accept it.
But Pan-Africanism is the same thing as ethno-nationalism.
I would accept the term being synonymous for the sake, like I'm accepting it. I'm not denying it. I'm saying I accept that.
Can I ask you a quick question? I'm sorry to interrupt. James, please, James, tell me, what is your summary of the colonization and slavery of Africa and the West Indies? Like, what's your summary? How do you summarize?
I agree that there was that white people suggested that they were burdened with.
I'm asking, how do you summarize it?
It's a bit of a difficult. I don't understand in what in what way?
In your mind, you know about the recent history of Africa in terms of colonization, right? Yeah. In your mind, you know the recent history of, the unfortunate, let me say, history.
Well, like neo-colonialism, is that what you're saying?
Oh.
Like, is Africa still colonized today? Is that what you're asking?
I'm not even gonna go that deep. I'm just saying, in your minds, you get me? How do you summarize the colonization of Africa and the slavery of Africans via the Caribbean, South America, etc., etc.?
Well, I mean, the Europeans gained a foothold in Africa.
Hold on. Wait. Gained a foothold.
Yeah.
That's beautiful language. Go on, babe.
Yeah, I don't know what do you want me to say? The Europeans enslaved sub-Saharan Africans.
Oh,
yeah, they profited off the triangular. They profited off the. Bruv, you said you're gonna ask one question. Now it's the vaguest question in the world, and stop every 2 seconds of the answer. I don't understand.
Slow down, because I'm not as quick as you, right? So I'm just saying, slow down. That's all. Slow down. Let me ask you again.
Yeah, they used a nuclear weapon on Africa.
A nuclear weapon?
Yeah. Don't, like, on a serious level, don't ask me a question. Don't ask me a stupid question and then stop me 27 times. James, it makes no sense.
James, I didn't stop. James, my guy, calm down. I didn't stop you.
I'm not calm. I was speaking. You said, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No,
let me ask you.
The thing, man. Come on, keep on track.
Let's let him finish it.
That's all.
No.
That's all.
I'm very calm. Check this. Think about. Listen. Stop talking, Anifa, and think about what you did. You said, let me interrupt. You said, let me interrupt, babe. And then ask me the vaguest question in the world, and then stop me every time I began answering it. What sense does that make?
That's all dead.
What sense does it make, though? Please make, like, it's stupid, man.
Stop talking shit. Like, fuck all of that, bedroom. Like, allow it.
Like, what are you doing? What are you doing now? Do you want an argument? Is that what you wanted? Did you want to just
say it? Sorry. Can I say it?
I don't get it.
Sorry, quickly, very quickly. Let me just say, right? Now, obviously, I'm laughing at you because what you just did was funny, right? But I don't think he did actually get to finish answering your question. In all fairness, yeah, and nothing against you, sis. I'm just saying that I think it's fair to just let him finish answering the question.
That's fine, But all I asked him to do was slow down.
Yeah, that's cool, sis. I get it.
What you're saying?
What do you ask me to, bro? Can I answer it in one word?
James, we don't have to kick off again, innit? Just speak.
I'm saying, I'm asking. This is to everyone on the panel. Is there a way, right, of me doing like a pithy, concise way of answering that question? Because it seemed very
probably not. But
I don't think so.
Fine. Right, then I think it's unfair to stop me at literally less than the first sentence. I think that's very unfair then. Right? I think it's really unfair.
Before you go ahead, James, can I just suggest something that we all literally give everybody? We let the two who are speaking speak, and they can question and interrupt as they see fit, but at the permission of the other. Otherwise, it's just going to keep descending into madness.
And I'd say
It's
this,
a rather
yeah,
interesting
you're right.
subject.
The irony is I literally just interrupted you, so I want to apologize for that quickly. Also want to apologize to you for 994. And 994, I respectfully decline that request you made of me, yeah? So I'm not going to answer it. I'm sorry, because I just don't think it's necessarily beneficial. And apologies if I was rude and brash, but I just don't think it makes no sense. If like you believe I don't have a good understanding or handle on that part of history, another time me and you can speak about that and you can pick my brain about what I think right now.
Why are you doing that? All I asked you to do was slow down. That's all. And now you're going to say that.
It's a bit broad. No. But that's what I'm saying. I'm saying I apologize.
If you want to chat about it, no problem. No problem.
Yeah.
What's it called?
But I will happily in the future. But I can't remember what I was saying before. So I can't remember what I was saying before. So the floor is whoever else.
Let's write to brother Emmy because I'm sure he's got a contribution to it.
Yeah.
I don't know where we're at right now.
Could I say something topic related, if that's okay?
Yes, please.
Yeah. I had a few points that I had thought of. And as I said, to be honest, I'm not saying that I'm the most knowledgeable on either of these ideologies or concepts, like in its totality. But one thing that struck out to me at first was the energy and idea that we are looking at it from a place of, which I understand, obviously, we're looking at it from one person's viewpoint versus another. But if we're looking at it from a subjective point of view, then we do need to recognize that wherever one group is feeling isolated, it doesn't matter why that group felt isolated or why that group decided to take on that project, as it were, to and as I said, like, I don't know if there's a bit of a mix up as well in terms of white nationalism and ethnic nationalism, because I've thought of other countries that are kind of ethno-nationals at times. So for example, like Haiti, it kind of fits that kind of bill. When they needed to step up and fight for their independence, they kind of grouped together, which didn't necessarily have an influence from the Pan-Africanism, because obviously I don't know if it was around at that time or that it just wasn't a thing, but I regardless of whatever reason a group needs support and someone to advocate for them, there is definitely the idea on both sides that in terms of its ability to be able to ostracize, to look out for the needs of the whole, and maybe ostracize other groups in the process, that it could be true for both parties. I also wanted to make the statement also that according to, one thing I would like to say is, according to the ethnic nationalism description or meaning, it talks definitely a lot more about political motivations and things like that as in relation to that ethnic group and what they're fighting for. Whereas, and if this is not, and it's not a judgment. I'm just saying, as I said, I'm not saying I'm just kind of getting my points out before everybody jumps back in there. Excuse me, sorry. But
sorry, sis.
Yeah.
Can I ask one question, sis, before you continue? I'm going to ask, you see, with the people in Haiti, yeah, is it fair to say that these people are fighting against being oppressed within their own
that's
country?
not what my whole point is. I'm just saying, this is what I'm saying. Again, we're doing emotive. We're doing, but how does it feel from that party's group, from that party's point of view? Each party decided that they had a right to exist because they felt threatened, regardless of who did the threatening. So if they felt like they had a right to exist, then as a result, you may ostracize other people. It's like, for example, when Black people will talk about uplifting our own people. Yeah, we know it, we love it. But there could be many other people who can't help but be whatever race they're on. They're like in this gray zone. Doesn't mean that we're trying to make them feel bad. But at the end of the day, do they both ostracize groups to a certain extent? Yes. Do you know what I mean? I'm not saying whether it's a good or bad thing, but we're looking at them from a subjective angle more than an emotive angle. And as I said, secondly, I wanted to say, in terms of the more political aspect of the nationalist group, I'm not, again, it's just a more subject to put out there to the panel, not necessarily anything that I have personally against the theory or for the theory. It's just, I was thinking, maybe if Pan-Afrikanists and black people or people from black origin or from the diaspora and Africa were focused a lot more on political measures, maybe we would remember that none of us are actually African, because Africa was given and named by Romans, and it was named after one tribe in that part of the world. And so technically, we are Asiatic, which means that if you are the original black man or woman and you come from the earth, then the whole earth is yours to move around and see fit. So if we're fighting for territory, which has been named, and I'm not, again, I'm maybe in Pan-Afrikanism.
Finish, man.
Yeah, please, thank you. I've listened to you guys for like a good minute. Thank you. If we did have more, and again, this is just to add to what the movement is already doing, because I have no problem with what the Pan-Africanist movement represents at all. It's just maybe we do need more politically defined issues so that we can fight for things that can help us to gain advantages, like ethnic nationalities have done. That was just some of my thoughts. But as I said, I'm no expert on the matter. I'm jumping in and kind of listening to you guys as I go. But those are just some of my thoughts around about.
Big up, sis.
But Ray, Asiatic, yeah. Ray, you say that Asiatic, you believe that it would be better for Africans to define themselves as Asiatic people.
No, I didn't say people should define themselves as anything. I'm just saying that when we fight over the name, as it were, then we reduce ourselves to being a name that's a label, again, that the same person and the same people's language that we're tearing apart, that we didn't use, or it wasn't our language in the first place. Do you know what I mean? We're like under-emphasizing the point of what the whole movement is really about in itself. I'm not saying to call yourself anything other than a Pan-Africanist. I'm just saying in general.
Who define Asian?
I'm just saying that it's very important for us to know all of the language.
Right. Can I get a quick question, please, guys? Can I just quickly ask, where did the Asiatic black man come from? Which part? Where are they located? Where do they originate from?
They came from the cradle of life, Ethiopia, South Africa. And as I said, but as I said, look, I'm not disputing the names. I'm just saying that we do fight for things in terms of, again, names and things like that other people have placed on us, rather than accept that, yes, that's where the cradle life started, but we do have remit. What happened to the remit of being able to be a king or queen anywhere, like setting up a remit anywhere? And as you said, that's what the Pan-Africanist movement, I think, does, which maybe isn't what the ethnic nationalist group does, but I do feel like both groups and both parties do tend to isolate somebody, and that's not from an emotive point of view, that's just a realistic, in reality point of view, regardless of who starts off it's like, oh, well, he started it first. Either way, those groups were created to support the rights and and to try to meet the needs of the people that they felt needed it, that group needed,
So, let me quickly ask you a question, please, yeah? Thank you for that. And I'm going to sort of ask the same question I asked before, right? Because I kind of disagree. Although I understand that there might have been a movement, but let me ask
you. Sis, mute, because you got some feedback.
With me?
No, not you. Sister, my sister, Ray. Yo, Ray, yeah, mute.
Okay, sorry.
So, sis, what I would like to ask you is, because I heard you mention Asiatic, and I heard you give a definition of where that came from, no problem. But what I wanted to ask is, if there wasn't persons in the diaspora, do you think there would be a strong Pan-African movement? Because for myself, let me add one more thing to that, and some people may or may disagree. No, yeah. Who's laughing? Oh,
sorry, I was on mute. Sorry, my bad. I was laughing at something completely different. Sorry, I apologize.
Because so that's what I was asking you. If there wasn't a diaspora ray of light, right? I'm asking you specifically, sis. Ray of light, you're there, yeah, bruv?
Yeah, I'm listening. I'm waiting for you to finish your question.
So I'm saying, if there wasn't a diaspora, do you think there would be a strong Pan-African movement?
I don't really deal in what ifs, to be honest. So I can't answer that question for you.
You don't deal with what ifs. You don't deal with what ifs. So if you don't deal with what ifs, what do you deal with? Just so I know.
That's a very broad question again.
I deal with fact, not fiction, but you know, as much as said,
you sent the lady for the ladies, so we don't need to hear you right now.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a very broad question, but if you mean, like I said, like I need to know if we're talking about what is, we can talk about what is, but if we're going to talk about what is, like what was or what could have been, many things could have been, but we would never know until things actually happen. It's like when they made coronavirus in the lab and nobody really knew what was going to happen until they let it out. That's the things that I work with. Like, no, you really never know something unless you can see it in motion. We don't know what could have been, but what we do know is what is.
Okay, all right. So if I said to you, if there was no,
but you have an opinion, right?
Wait, Raheem, I'm coming in next.
If I said there was no slavery, would you be in England?
Yeah, why not? If you tell me that, you would obviously have a reason to say that, wouldn't you? You wouldn't just say it for no reason.
Okay, so I'm saying it because through slavery, then obviously we became part of the colony, etc., and then time come when they brought us over. In its shortest version.
You think that we've been everywhere before they came to Africa at that specific time, and they took us everywhere. We were already everywhere.
That's a fair point. Still, that is a fair point. That's a fair point. But all right, then I'll work with that for now.
Big up, sis. I love how it's a fair point when you say it.
No, it's just we're not going to get political about it. I love everyone. It's not personal. Remember, it's about enlightenment.
It's not personal, but because I've said this before this year, I'm just glad that someone has reiterated it and it's now been extended.
Go to Emmy. Go to Emmy. Go to Emmy. Go to Emmy.
Wouldn't be here.
Go to Emmy.
All right, sis. Big up everybody. Yeah, man. So I've been listening in. So someone, I don't know if it was Shakara mentioned, but I feel like
it was me.
I feel like we kind of skirted over.
That's a lie.
I feel like we kind of skirted over the ethnic makeup of Africa when we're trying to make this comparison with ethno-nats, right?
That's what. Go ahead, bro.
Yeah, so like clearly Africa as a continent is made up of multiple ethnicities, right? Ethnic groups, sorry. If that's you know, they're named and whatnot. It presents a problem on both sides, I think. I think on one hand, there are people like Atticus who's like been chatting bare grease in the chat about Garvey and Pan-Africanism and whatnot, who would say that, you know, the Pan-African project, the project of Pan-Africanism is an attempt to, you know, just completely like homogenize Africa. You know, we've heard this argument before, right? And that itself would be more in line with an ethno-nat agenda, right? And so on that basis, you know, the negative juxtaposition can be made by James Jones. But if it's taken that it's not an attempt to homogenize, and that, you know, but then that might go against you, Shakara, and your perception of the actual continuity and cultural centricism of, you know, the ethnicities of Africa. So I'm just putting that out there for people to argue for.
First of all, the people that make the argument never challenge the veracity and the credibility of Europe when it tries to unite itself, even though Europe is made up of various different groups of people over time. And even in terms of the nation states that are currently constituted under which they're trying to unite, we could identify that British culture is different to French culture, is different to German culture, is different to Belgian culture, and so on and so forth. But yeah, their capacity to cooperate is not considered to be null and void based upon their differences. Yeah, in that regard. And people that make that point also need to do more study on the history of African peoples, because it is not unusual within the history of African peoples for groups of people to come together and federate, so to speak, or form nations that are made up of different so-called ethnicities or tribes. And I think that really doesn't need to be explained any further. If it does, I mean, I can back it up with sources and evidence and people.
Sorry, Ray.
Yo, you got feedback, you know.
Really quickly, yeah, Ray, you got feedback. I think it might be on YouTube. I just want to add a definition really quickly of ethnic group so that people are like on track in that. Right, I don't even know where this is from. It says a group of people who share a similar culture, i.e. beliefs, values, and behaviors, language, religion, ancestry, or other characteristic that is often handed down from one generation to the next. They may come from the same country or live together in the same area. Most people know that definition, but hopefully it helps in the argument.
Can I ask Shakara the question I asked earlier to see if he can answer it? Because no one obviously had an answer earlier. And, you know, Shakara is quite knowledgeable in the Pan-African area. I know I was making jokes earlier, but to be fair, I don't know a lot about Pan-Africanism. I don't know enough to really talk that much on it. So I was just going to ask Shaka, as far as the what was I saying? The Kurdish looking phenotype within Africa, i.e. the Egyptian, the Libyan, XYZ. Are these people African also, or are they not African?
These people don't claim to be African, at least for the most part. And so
Egypt's not in Africa then.
So Egypt is no less in Africa than South Africa is, but the white people in South Africa don't claim to be African either. So yeah.
Some of them do. Sorry, can I just be clear? Let's, for the sake of this argument, can we assume both sides? Can you answer both for them, Shaka? So answer it based upon the fact that people are claiming to be African, and then answer it based on the fact that
it would make no difference. It would make no difference within the context of Pan-Africanism, in the sense of the fact that whether they do or not, we understand and know the group of people that Pan-Africanism was developed to serve, right? So yeah, it makes no difference whether they would or not.
But this is I think
it's not made to serve them.
No, it wasn't. No, and
No,
sorry, can I just say, among these said groups of people, they have their own movements. Pan-Arabism was a movement across North Africa, not so long ago, right? It didn't claim to be advocating on behalf of so-called sub-Saharan Africans. In fact, the idea of sub-Saharan Africa is a terminology that was.
Please, for 1 second, can I ask you a quick question? Yeah. So, if there was some kind of so let's just be clear. If that is the case, then is Black nationalism synonymous with Pan-Africanism?
Good question. And so there are different shades of Pan-Africanism, right? And there are even some Pan-Africanists who say, you know what, because of the way this terminology has been appropriated and therefore watered down, we may need to find another different terminology. There is such a thing as Black nationalist Pan-Africanism, which is often differentiated from what might be
regular Pan-Africanism.
No, not regular Pan-Africanism. There's like socialist Pan-Africanism, which is obviously advocating for socialism. Black nationalist Pan-Africanism is more it has a greater emphasis on deriving our economic and political philosophies from our indigenous cultures and the retentions of our indigenous cultures.
Okay, but quickly.
So yeah, there are different shades of Pan-Africanism. So they're not completely distinct. But then, sorry, finally, there are others who have who define Black nationalisms as Black people advocating specifically where they are. So for some people, Black nationalism is Black people in America or Black people in Jamaica just dealing with Black issues in America. They're not interested in Black people anywhere else in the world.
So, but just based on that, just briefly, yeah. So, if you had, right, a group of, so let's say these people that have this understanding of this European identity or European culture is all homogenous and therefore, you know, Western hunter-gatherers or whatever it is, whatever ancestry they refer to, right? But then you show them an inhabitant of Britain who shares similar sort of ancestry, but let's say is phenotypically Black, right? Like let's say they have one Black ancestor and that sort of affected them phenotypically, and they say, and then they exclude that person from the group based upon the fact that even though they make the claim it's based on ancestry and inhabitants and indigenous to the land, the region, what have you, the fact skin color is important, therefore we
it depends.
We can argue that.
It depends, and it's not the skin color. So when we're talking about Pan-Africanism takes into consideration, it does deal with matters of skin color, partly because skin color was a key component in the philosophy that oppressed us. And so, for example, a lot of Pan-African movements place a massive emphasis on Black beauty because we were indoctrinated into the ideology of Black ugliness, right? But it's not the skin color. There are cultural considerations. It just so happens that the people and the culture, the people that develop these cultures, for the most part, at the very least, happen to share similar tones of skin, right? You know what I'm saying? Or a spectrum of tones of skin.
But I'm trying to make the case to you, though. I'm trying to make the case to you. Sorry, I didn't finish. Right? You did interrupt me. Okay.
I apologize.
He's answering your question, though, James. Let him answer.
No, one second. If I interrupted, I didn't realize I
knows what I was going to ask him.
Go ahead.
I'm not sure you know. That's the reason. You got the question? So you?
No, I thought I did. You're asking me about the exception to the rule, right? So there's an individual or a group of.
No. I'm saying if you both share. So if from that, right, I can deduce that their pan-Europeanism, let's say, just for the sake of this argument, or their ethno-nationalism is tantamount to white nationalism, and then we find a similar example with an Arab who's genetically similar to the pharaohs, who's also genetically similar to some other sub-Saharan people and shares some ancestry with them, but we still say he's excluded from this group. Then I'm pointing that to you as a similarity. If you can concede that some forms of Pan-Africanism are tantamount to Black nationalism, and you could also concede that some forms of ethno-nationalism are tantamount to white nationalism, then that would be a similarity. That's what I was trying to show you.
No, well, okay. I think you've missed my point when it comes to the issue of ethno-nationalism, but we'll leave that aside for now. The issue is this: that whatever a people identify as, right, let's say the actual phonetics that they use to identify themselves can and will evolve, right? So what is important here is who and what they're referring to. So let's say for argument's sake, right, that the term African is not sufficient, yeah, in terms of as a descriptor, linguistically, yeah,
correct,
right. Let's say that may or may not be the case, right? But what's important is what do the people mean when they say it, yeah? So if you're referring to these specific peoples with a specific experience or shared experience, that and where that's what matters, yeah. So if we never use African and we said Azania, for example, yeah, Azanian, yeah, which is a term coming from Southern Africa, they would still be referring to the same people. But the term Azania is not as much in the public consciousness as African, and so that's why the question is asked. But people try to confuse the issue, and this is one of the reasons why it's important. I think something that Ray said is instructive, right? In the sense of the fact that obviously all of the ideologies have the people that they're advocating on behalf of to the exclusion of other people who they're not advocating on behalf of. Why? Because we're dealing with power dynamics, and so therefore those said people must have some power that is exclusive to them, that nobody else can come and tamper with, right? That is the point, right? So
that's also something that ethno-nationalists say. Sorry, when they refer to power dynamics.
But bro, that's something that all groups who are seeking power say. These distinctions are not exclusive to people that advocate on behalf of ethnicities.
I know, but we're building the case.
Right.
So can I
give his answer, because this is confusing. I can't hear what he's saying.
It's silly to keep doing this because the white man's burden.
That's what we're doing.
Because Hegel and them man there, and Locke and Hume and all them man there who were Renaissance thinkers. All advocated Enlightenment thinkers. Sorry, no, yeah, you're right. Sorry, Enlightenment thinkers all advocated the superiority of white people biologically and culturally, and you posit the idea of Western cultural supremacy. I don't put you just in league with them. Just so I might question the extent to which you you adhere to the philosophy. 1 second. So because me and a white nationalist says something that sounds similar, doesn't mean we're coming from the same place, bro.
Yo, Shaka, can you start that again? Because I couldn't hear you properly. Sorry. Can you start again, please, Shaka?
False equivalence, though. That is strange.
No,
But how are you saying that when you're drawing your entire argument on false equivalence?
No, that's what we're doing here, my guy.
Equivalent. 1 second. 1 second. This is there is a blatant false equivalence in the idea that me trying to free myself from colonization is the same thing as the white man trying to hold on to the spoils of colonization. This is a joke. Yeah, it's a false equivalency.
Thank you, Shaka. But Shaka, I think that what's happening here is that your words are being misconstrued and being confused for some type of agenda. I'm not sure if James Jones is one of these Pan-Arabists.
Why did you do this?
I was going to ask you a question, Shaka. What came first, Pan-Arabism or Pan-Afrikanism?
Yeah, cool. Can I just respond to Shaka, please, if you don't mind? Yeah. What I'm saying to you is, no, the topic of debate is Pan-Africanism, not your version of Pan-Africanism, not what you believe in, not that you are. I'm saying that the different understandings, right, the principles, this is what I'm more interested in anything, are they similar, more similar, let's say, than other political ideologies that are more alike, that are supposedly or in theory meant to be more similar to them, right? This is the argument in a nutshell. What you're doing, I didn't really understand it. I didn't see the equivalent.
What if they are? I just want to know, like, because we haven't got to that.
Question, bro. What do you think the world's going to end if they are?
I can answer you, James.
I have an opinion. Hold on. 1 second, please, Shaka. To answer MA, I have an opinion. My opinion is that they are similar, and I gave you the reason being the argumentation that they utilize. That's my position. Not that they are similar in their sort of ultimate conclusions or what they, you know what I mean? It's just argument. That's all I said in the beginning. And I asked Shaka, does he reject or accept it? And he said he doesn't. He didn't say he didn't reject it. So then he could potentially agree with me. It's not. There's no saying that he's actually in opposition to my view.
That's not even the point. The point is that
I don't understand what you brought in about Hume. Right? What did Hume and Locke say about? I don't get it.
Because you keep saying that you keep saying that white nationalists say the same thing, and I'm saying to you, it doesn't matter. Yeah, we keep to, and this is why I say the veracity of the argument is extremely important. When white nationalism formed itself based upon the presumption of superiority to other people. Yes. Yeah. Now, in 2020, they have gone.
Do you acknowledge that, James?
Let me finish. Right? Let me finish. Since that time,
yes.
Since that time, right, they have lost some of the manifestations of their superiority, and some among them, yes, are vexed about the fact that they lost the British Empire and them kind of things there, and so they see themselves as victims of a loss, like the white people who got reparations from the British government in the 1920s, right, in relation to loss of property, and them kind of things there. So yes, they saw them, they may see themselves as victims, but if we check the veracity of their argument, right, on a second, now, but the bigger judgment though is because, and again, so this is why I was probing the idea. 1 second, please. This is why I was probing the idea of ethno-nationalism, because you're making it specific to white ethnats who are specific people that have a specific ideology that comes from a specific historical experience. It's not the same as all other, 1 second. It's not the same as all other all other political ideologies that are based upon an ethnicity in the world or in history. So we have to look at the veracity of the statements. And I'm saying that
you spoke a lot. In my opinion, do not necessarily maybe I'm stupid there, but I didn't necessarily understand. That's why when I stop you and ask you questions, I don't know if you give a shit about me understanding you, like if you wouldn't mind taking the time.
Can I ask a quick question, James?
I had a question first.
And then I'm gonna go. Yeah, all right. Wait 1 minute, Shifa. 1 minute.
No, because I had a question first.
Yeah, I know. 1 minute. 1 minute. I know you're logically black, but are you emotionally black?
We're going somewhere else, man.
Yeah.
Right, listen, Shaka, my question to you is this year. As far as Pan-Africanism and Pan-Arabism, which you've just informed me about, I never even knew that existed until just now. Could you tell me which one?
I'll answer that another time, innit? It's just a bit weird now. But I don't mind answering.
All right, man.
Pan, listen. And this is the problem, right? Pan is simply a prefix here.
It means
Yeah,
all.
all it means is all. So there's Pan-Americanism, yeah, and there's various different other pans, right? As far as I'm aware, in terms of an ideology, a specific ideological focus, Pan-Africanism exists before Pan-Arabism, as far as I'm aware.
As far as you're aware.
So yes, because
when did it first form?
Sorry, so there's a pre-history to the Pan-Africanism, and then there's a specific history to the coinage of the term. The coinage of the term is the late 1800s. The first Pan-African conference is held in the year 1900. But hold on. Ideologies have histories, right? So that what goes into Pan-Africanism, or the basic ideas that formulate into Pan-Africanism exist before the term Pan-Africanism.
Do you see any significance in the fact that Pan-Africanism and Pan-Arabism both come about at more or less exactly the same time?
I never said that they came out exactly the same time. So I'm not even sure why.
No, you didn't say that. No, Shaka, you didn't say that. I'm looking at it says modern Pan-Africanism began around the start of the 20th century. The African Association, later renamed Pan-African Association, was established around 1897 by Henry Sylvester Williams, who organized the first Pan-African conference in London in 1900. And then if I go to Pan-Arabism, it says Pan-Arabism is a political movement and belief system that promotes an idea that all Arabs should unite to form one country or state. The idea of Pan-Arabism was first created during the late 1800s and early 1900s, which is exactly the same time period.
My brother, we're using English. Among the Arabs, they don't call it Pan-Arabism. Yeah.
Okay.
It's what it's referred to when they translate it into English. Just like in various different in Southern and East Africa, they use terms like Ubuntuism. Yeah, we're speaking English, so we're using the English language. So wherever it is that we've got, like, you know what I'm saying, we're going to use the English language to describe it because we speak in English.
Yeah? So when they use the term pan, 1 second, guys.
Sorry, to answer the question, however, it's not unusual because and there is a link in the sense of the fact that this was the time of the rise in European colonization of the world. The British Empire is at its height at this point, or let's say approaching its height at this point. And so various peoples around the world are organizing in order to throw off the shackles of Western imperialism. And so
when they use the term pan, when they use the term pan, when they use the term pan though, yeah, where are they getting that? Where are you establishing this word pan as a reference to the word?
It's an English word.
It's an English word.
Yes, it's an English.
Obviously, when we deal with English here, you know, you find other things within the English language that refers to something. I.e., you can find, you know, like the story of Peter Pan. You can find the story of Pan. You know, the kind of it's like a demigod kind of thing, you know, throughout Europe. So obviously, you know, I don't understand why they would use something that can be associated with so many other things.
I tell you what, bro.
Hey, Shaka.
No, I'm moving on, man. I'm moving on. If you can find me, if one can find me an etymological link between the prefix pan, the deity pan, and Peter Pan, maybe I'll consider the argument. Yeah. And I look forward to you finding that.
Wait. Let me just make sure I'm clear. You want me to show you a direct connection between Peter Pan and the deity Pan?
No, you're suggesting that there's a link between the word Pan as a prefix. Yes, ancient. I believe it's Norse. Is Pan a Norse deity?
I believe so. Yeah.
What's it called? Right. And the character, the fictional character Peter Pan. Yeah. So if you can find me a linguistic or etymological link between how these various different pans develop, then maybe I consider your argument. Up until that point, I can't.
I'm going to pull up a screen share. So Veli, if you're out there, please jump on so we can do some screen share.
I was going to say something really quickly. The thing about Pan-Arabism, technically, the Ummah was already Pan-Arabism. Can't even say the word, man.
Arab.
But it wasn't called that. So I don't know if everyone accepts that.
I agree with what you're saying.
I agree as well. Yeah, like as in Arab culture.
By the way, can I just say that there is also Pan-Islamism as an ideology. You know, there's various different pans because pan means all.
But can we? But yeah. So, but back to when I didn't understand you. Yeah. So like this would be like something that would like I wouldn't be able to reconcile with what I thought you were saying in your like that little thesis. Yeah. It's like basically if
you're supposed to put the word error that before thesis when you're referring to
so
it,
I do apologize. And you know what? That was anything but extempore. I'll be honest. But yeah, no. But no, basically, like, but then what? So one can just define, if one can just define Pan-Africanism as a form of ethno-nationalism, then the two are, if anything, the two just share the same face on the same side, on the same coin.
But you're saying the two as though there are only two forms. Like that's what I keep saying to you. If you're asking me, sorry, can I just clarify? If you're asking me, is Pan-Africanism a form of ethno-nationalism? You may be able to make an argument for that. If you're, the question is, is ethno-nationalism and Pan-Africanism two sides of the same coin? And I'm saying, well, then we're gonna have to check what form of ethno-nationalism that we're referring to and delve into the basis and the foundation, the history, the development, and the goals of this particular form, and then make a judgment.
But you're forgetting. I feel this is
sorry.
What I feel like.
But James, whereas you may have an argument, but James, whereas you may have an argument, you may also not have an argument, because if one is saying that Africa is full of a bare different ethnicities, then is it ethno-nationalism? Just what I'm saying.
If I said, yeah, for instance, if I said someone, this is really crude, right? But this is just I'm attacking the logic of your argument, the initial argument. If I said someone ran down the street, then another statement I said someone front flipped down the street, and then another statement I made is someone back flipped down the street. Now all of them are somewhat similar in that there's a street, you know, there's some kind of movement or motion in a direction being down the street, right? But there is a particular similarity between the two flipping motions, be it front flipping and back flipping, right?
I agree.
And they are more similar, right, than to each other than they are to running, right?
I agree.
Whether or not either of these statements are true is absolutely irrelevant to the similarity.
No,
right?
It
is. Literally is. That's why I'm using
the question is, are they two sides of the same coin? What your analogy doesn't do.
You're doing this muddy in the water thing. Let me bring it home then, please. If you're not going to say anything of it, let me just bring what I'm saying home. So I'm saying to you, of all of the arguments, right, that do, as I agree with that statement you made, that represent groups of people, that advocate on behalf of groups, I agree with that, no problem. Of all of them, the question here is, are some of these similar? Forget the phrasing about two sides of the same coin. For a moment, what I'm asking you is, I'm appealing to you, let's refer to it as being similar and dissimilar. And I feel like you keep focused on in this idea of whether or not one of them is fallaciously sort of comparing itself to another.
For somebody who's scientifically minded, why is veracity somehow all of a sudden null and void?
One more time. Yeah, you're right. So cool, let's do it. So one more time. I'm gonna use, it's really crude, but I want to be really simple. So if I asked you, I said three statements, one walking down the street, one front flipping, one back flipping. I can't do either of them. Right? I can't do either front flip.
Your analogy is correct.
When it's similar.
They're all similar. Yeah, in your analogy, they're all similar.
More similar.
But the reason why your analogy, what you've just stated is disanalogous. I was about to say your analogy is disanalogous, but that doesn't ring of poetry.
Yeah, go on.
What's it called? Is that it doesn't probe intentionality, right, and goal. Do you understand what I'm saying?
You got to know that's irrelevant.
Hold on a second. The function of an ideology is based upon its intentions. Yes, its intentions for formulating in the first place, and the goals. They're the intended goals, yeah, of the ideology. So to try to X that out of the conversation, and I get why you would, because it suits your argument, but you cannot do that. It doesn't. What makes the ideology functional is that you're removing all the substance, yeah, from it when you do that by just saying, well, yeah, they want to advocate on behalf of their people, and they want to advocate on behalf of their people. No, enslavers, yes, right, and the enslaved are not the same. Yeah, when the white man on the plantation was protecting his plantation, he was protecting his own people. Yeah,
that's
hold on. When the enslaved, when the black man and woman on the plantation rose up and slit the slave master's throat, they were also advocating on behalf of their own people. These are not the same thing.
That's a wild false. Like you, bro, I don't know what you're even doing.
It's just an aspect of the proposition that you don't want to deal with. That's what it is. There's nothing incredible about it.
But Shakara, that's why I know you lot shut me down, yeah. But I'm gonna chat. That's why I asked the question: is black being logical or emotional for James?
I don't really have the opportunity. Like, I don't have the opportunity to distinguish or
opportunity to distinguish.
Are you just going to repeat everything I say incredulously? Like,
no, my guy. No,
are you just going to repeat everything that I say?
I may not have your eloquence, you know what I mean, and you know the use of the English language thing. But I asked you a very basic question, innit? And I asked you: is black to you logical or emotional? Answer that.
Do you know what, Nando? Can I
credit to you, yeah, man, because you must have your level of layering abstraction is just obviously mine.
You know what? Though? We have to have the ability to think in abstraction, my brother. That's the reality.
Being black, logical or emotional?
Blackness.
Is blackness logical or emotional to me?
Yeah, what does that even mean?
Exactly.
It's both to me still.
Hold on, wait. Did you just ask what does that even mean?
You just stole that from me. I was just gonna say
wait. Did you just ask what does that even mean?
But what do you mean about black being emotional or logical? Like
what do you mean? What do I mean?
Yeah, but what are you actually trying to say?
Hold on. Hold on, 9.
Explain to him because he didn't understand.
220 soon done.
No.
What do you mean?
Yeah, just explain it, then.
Explain it, 9. Explain it because he's asking you a question.
No, I'm not explaining shit. I want to know what man said.
Yeah, but you're on this arguing thing, bro, rather than chatting. Like, just chatting it. What she's
asking,
my understanding of blackness.
What she's asking you is do you feel it? Yeah, in your gizzard. Yeah, that's what
you know what? Let me say this. I would say that black. I would say that this is my understanding of the question. I don't know. You could correct me. I would say it's definitely more emotional than logical because there is less logical basis for one to be considered black. Like I'm only black because essentially I'm darker than people that are essentially the default in the world, right? So they consider themselves the default, and then everybody darker than them is some kind of different classification that follows on from their classification, and they're the only people seemingly that have managed to classify themselves, right? So I guess based on that, it's emotional. Whether or not blackness is logical, then following from that logic, then guessing the blackness is probably more emotional than logical from a black standpoint, but from a European or a white standpoint, it's probably highly logical. It's listen, we improve our own position, we exalt ourselves by referring to these people as black. So
from a European standpoint, what do you mean? Do you think that they're thinking about us from a black standpoint?
No, that's not what he said, man.
Or what did he say to me? You break it down to me then. Go on.
No. I'm not doing that at all. I'm not getting involved.
I say no, speak for James. But not accountable for speaking for James.
While there's a low, yeah. But Shaka, bruv, that was the most wild comparison I've ever That was really incoherent. Bro. You said, hold on. You said
it's convenient, but it's not wild.
Hold on, man. Come, I'll show you why. You said comparing these two political ideologies, right? So if we're just going to quickly refer to my analogy, the two different types of running, and that was meant to expose the fallacious reasoning in you assuming that the verity of each of these claims had anything to do with their similarity, like let's say the framework or the structure of the claim, right? The principle, like I referred to it. But anyway, cool. For the moment, you said that is similar to saying a slave master and a slave are similar. Who made any claim ever? Like,
Yeah,
what?
it is. I'll explain it to you, my brother. So, soon as you're
That's
not
terrible. That's
I am
terrible.
saying to you, that I get why, yeah, you and others who have this want to conflate Pan-Africanism with white ethno-nationalism, right?
I'm
White
not doing
nationalism,
that. Oh my god!
right? But you're saying that
You
there's
argue the same way. I said you are. Hey, MA, please, because I said this to you clearly.
maybe I'm
They argue the same way.
Let me try something. Shakara, help me out because I don't have the depth of knowledge that you do, yeah? So from whichever year or whichever decade certain Africans landed on in America as slaves, right?
Yes,
From
sir.
that point on,
Yes, sir.
let's do like a little, side by side, journey of the slave master and his people and the enslaved.
Me
and
like
their
them
people.
something there. Yes. Hey, this
Because for me,
one true baby.
for me, the trajectory is the reason why Shakara's point is valid, right? Because it's a timeline and there's no breaks in the timeline. Yeah. So from when an enslaved African in, I don't know, 18, whatever, 17, whatever, recognizes that they're part of a particular tribe and things are taken away from them, whatever, and they want to escape, yeah? They want to escape as a family, as a group, yeah? Clearly, yeah? The slave master wants to enslave as a group, yeah? And then it's reinforced by those who are not necessarily slave masters, but also support the project by virtue of them being white, right? So can we now travel from the 18th century onwards to the point at which abolition takes place?
And we've been traveling.
I don't get.
We've
I
been
don't
traveling.
Traveling,
man. Keep traveling, man. We are doing. Let him travel, man.
One second. I know my talk is dead, yeah, but 1 second, right? Yo, James. You the ancestry of your lineage, yeah. Is it similar to mine, bruv?
It depends. It depends how you look at it. But I'm not like, Nine, you've already been through this one as well.
No, but James, we have to go there.
About myself.
That's why I asked you the question.
Yeah, but I'm not going to make it personal about myself. Like, it's not. I have zero interest in telling anybody what my personal attachment.
All right, then, cool. All right, then, James.
All right, James, your brother Elron's in the back. He's in the chat.
Well, within the realms of similarity,
you know what, James? No problem. I haven't got no problem.
Similarity.
Quickly, Saka, please. Yeah, sorry, thank you. What I'm trying to say to you is the reason that they're similar, in my opinion, is the argumentation they utilize. If you like, the instruments of achieving their goals with regards to argumentation, right? This is what the case I made. And I've been very clear.
Some of the similarity than we are talking
about.
Hold
on. What Shakara said, right, okay. So, for instance, if somebody was to say, if there was two people, right, a domestic abuse, right? So a woman is battered by a husband or whatever, vice versa, and the husband. Now, when the police interview them separately, if both of them say that they're victims of one another, she stresses me out, I'm just going through all this trauma, and she's giving it all the same thing, like he always just beats me up when my dinner's not ready, right? I'm saying the arguments that they're both utilizing to explain the actions, let's say she hit him first, but he battered her or something like that, right? Now, his behavior is not justified by the fact that she's utilized the same argument as him. And it actually doesn't excuse him in the same way it may excuse her, right? Maybe maybe she did not make his dinner or something. That doesn't mean that she deserves to be beaten, and that doesn't mean that should in any way absolve him of any of his crimes or wrongdoing. But if somebody was to say, hold on, please, I beg you. If someone was to say, yeah, that both of them use the exact same logic, it's a toxic relationship. They're both bad for each other, even though he's far worse because he's beating a defenseless, or not even defenseless, but beating a woman that he's much bigger than or stronger than. It doesn't detract from the fact that they're using the same argument, right? So the truth of the claim, i.e. to say that, actually, I'm going to analyze this and I'm going to say, she is far more a victim of you than you are of her, even though she may antagonize you and she may belittle you, but you are far worse. You are more of a bully than she ever could be for how you guys interact. it doesn't detract from the fucking arguments they use.
Some elements of what you say.
Can I
Yo,
ask
Shakara,
Some
pointless argument. Can I
elements
present my information now? This is guys rounding things
some
around.
elements of what I said. No, don't interrupt the thing right now. Hold on. Some
we have
elements of what I
same
say,
thing
right?
10 times then.
Some
Go ahead.
elements of what I say, right, don't make no sense. But the reality of the situation is, yeah, when man I try to make this argument about similarity, the defining factor within the reasoning, that is where I can't agree with the brethren. Because even within the analogy with the I use, right? The I use an analogy of man a beat woman. For not have him food pan table and all them something there. When we put that analogy now in the real world, if me I talk to my sister or my cousin or my mama, me no care where she do. Me no want the man put him hand pan me woman. So in a court of law or all them something there, yeah, where you get if I deal with the thing of,
are you intentionally trivializing this? I don't
hold
understand.
on, man, hold on, brethren, hold on. If we are dealing with the issue of domestic violence, yes, within the realms of reality, we're not gonna say, well, the man them where a complaint say them woman are frustrate them have a point.
No,
How
they don't.
stupid is that?
That
Yeah,
is stupid.
we're not gonna say, well, boy, you know, them come from the same place. Them
They
have the
don't.
same motivation.
They
How
definitely
stupid is
don't.
that? The man where I put him
I don't know what this is an age of.
injustice. That is the thing. And the woman then will come together and say, yo, we born domestic violence, you know.
Yeah,
and the
man,
next time a man take up him hand, yeah,
Gunshot
put hand
that.
from me, a gunshot for them.
Gunshot that,
Yeah,
yes.
they come from a different
Don't
place.
get me, man. I don't know.
And
I
that
feel
way
like,
around,
yeah.
And we're not
I
begging
feel
enough
like, yeah. I'm done obviously now, but I feel like that clearly
Yeah.
illustrated the point. I don't know what that was, but yeah, I feel like
thank you.
clearly illustrated the point, and
Hold on,
it
what do you mean you
just
don't know
shows
what
how risible.
Now,
Yeah, okay.
don't worry about him understanding.
Against
It
the
shows,
eye.
yeah. I'm not Jamaican.
Go on to the eye.
Yeah, I'm not Jamaican, Shifa. Great point.
He's not going to understand.
Listen.
You make a beautiful point,
Why do people do this? I don't get it.
James Bond, you make a beautiful point. You're not Jamaican, innit?
Yeah.
You're not Jamaican, you're not West Indian, yeah? I ask you, when you speak about blackness, are you coming from a place of logic or emotion? I've not yet heard the answer. You with me? Now,
oh my God, I
he said emotion. He said emotion.
Okay, so you're coming, so therefore, if you're coming from a place of emotion, yeah, James Jones, rightly or wrongly, you know, because like I said, you know, and that's what I said when we were when you have people like Ralph, right? And back in the day, I used to say there's no point in us. I'm sort of detracting a little bit, but bear with me, right? There's no point in us speaking to a man like Ralph from an emotional point because they're just dealing with logic, in it. They're just black and white. You with me? Now, sometimes I feel like you're a little bit like that, James. No disrespect, but it's very black and white. You with me? Would you agree with that, bro?
I don't know, man. I feel like this. I feel like this argument is
no. We're not arguing, James. We are not arguing.
All right.
We're reasoning, James.
Reasoning.
Reasoning. We don't argue.
Clearly not. Right. So this is a compare and contrast. This is compare and contrast, right? So that's all it's doing. So I'm approaching this as logically as I can. I feel like I've tried to argue from first principles, give clear examples. I've also tried to argue analogously, like
You're not arguing for first principles. You're not arguing for first principles. You're not.
I was earlier, and now I'm arguing analogously, and even that you struggle with. Like basically,
I'm not struggling. You're struggling. I'm not struggling. You're struggling.
You're interrupting me. And literally, this is case in point about what I'm talking about emotional, irrational arguments, because I do argue with lots of different people, and I see similarities from my own personal bias, sort of anecdotal perspective. That even this is like I can clearly show you. Listen to the preposterous nature, the fucking risible nature of Shaka's comparison. It's like saying a slave master and a slave are the same. Like, whoa, that is one of the
How, James?
Right, Emma, you come in, man. What's happening? Let someone else on the panel speak as well. Emma, go ahead, bro.
Everyone's speaking. Everyone's speaking. Stop trying it. Everyone's speaking, right?
Emma ain't had his chance, man. He's trying to speak.
Emma, my brother, Emma, do you mind if I make a quick point before you come in, bro?
Well, let Shaka go, man.
Right? Right. Thank you very much. Very quickly, yeah. What's happening here is that brother James is attempting to define what the most important indicators are in the conversation. His argument is that the framework of the argument, yes, is what is most important. I am arguing that the intentionality behind the ideology is what is most important. The basic fundamental principles of the ideology is what is most important. Yeah, for him, me saying that is focusing on a secondary issue, if relevant at all. I am saying that what James is focusing on is redundant because it's not substantive. Yeah, anybody can formulate anything to say anything. It doesn't make their ideology more valid in the real world. That ethno-nationalists are white, isn't it? Relax, man. Ideologies can be based upon lies. Yeah, we don't credit ideologies based upon lies with the same veracity that we do ideologies that are based upon at least some level of truth, right? That is the point that I'm making. So to compare, yes, to say that white nationalism on the one hand and Pan-Africanism on the other are two sides of the same coin is a fundamentally flawed argument based upon the history of both ideologies, how they come into being, and what problems and what problems. I gave you a clear example. I've already said, if we're going to talk about first principles, I've already demonstrated that white nationalism didn't always come with this. Oh, these people are sabotaging our. But do you understand what first principles are? But wait, to use that word, do you even understand what they are? Because when I give you an example of using an emotional attachment to an idea of a social construct and excluding people to create an inconsistent system, which is ultimately. Why are you doing it to me? Why don't you interrupt him? Why don't you interrupt him? Cool. Tantamount to a color nationality, right? So we've gone from ethnic grouping to color nationality. I gave you the clear examples of that would qualify ethno-nationalism in the European Western hunter-gatherer sense. Isn't it the same thing? Please, I beg you, please, that would qualify that as white nationalism, and it would qualify Pan-Africanism as black nationalism. That is arguing from first principles to say what is the first principle? What is the first principle in white nationalism? What is the first principle
X political ideology, right? Create X political ideology morphs into X racial identity, and Y political ideology morphs into Y racial identity.
And you're arguing that's the first principle in white nationalism?
No, I'm arguing that is what arguing from first principles looks like. It's saying if we're going to deconstruct this thing and say what is similar about this one, what is similar about this one, we're seeing the fundamental principles, right, of these things. We're saying one of the fundamental principles of this, right, I would say, is that if all people that live in African inhabitants of Africa, right, can be, if some people can be excluded based on X quality, and I'm saying that's also shared by another political ideology, then these two are similar. It's very similar.
Again, I've not denied that there are any similarities. Yeah, that there are. If we're listening, I've already said that there are similarities between all political ideologies.
You have said that. You've said it 7 times.
Right? But the question is not whether there are similarities.
And I've also said there's
I've already said. I said from the very beginning. Yeah, in a very rudimentary way. I've said it from the very. This is almost my first.
You're just running around in circles, bro.
No, you're running around in circles, James. Just allow it now, man. This is a waste of everyone's time. If you're just going to repeat the same point 8 times, why do I need to hear it 8 times? I don't get this, man. This is annoying, man.
This was basically my first statement, right? What's it called? if we're gonna just be on a very rudimentary level, we can say, well, yeah, this group is advocating on behalf of their people, this group is advocating on behalf of their people, therefore they're similar. We can do that, and there might be some basis. This is basically my first statement. There might be some basis for doing that. But if we're talking about a political ideology, and we're asking the question, are these two sides of the same coin? History, intentionality, and basic fundamental principles have to be taken into consideration. Yeah, nobody has.
Alright, you lot, man, seriously, this is getting frustrating now.
Nobody has argued.
Your point. Can you make your point and finish, please, bro?
Nobody has argued against the idea that that there are similarities between different groups of people who are advocating on behalf of their specific idea.
Shaka, can you do me one favor? Can you do me one big favor? That's the last favor I'm gonna ask you. Hey, Shaka, please. It's a bit irrelevant, yeah, but because this guy doesn't like any of us talking, if he asks you a question, I beg you don't answer his fucking question.
James,
if you're finished making your point now, I'm going to present my information after M.A. Brown. Sorry, M.A. Go ahead, bro.
Yeah, I had a few things to say still. I wanted to know what the coin is, this so-called coin. But aside from that, at what point...
what is a coin?
What is the coin? What is the coin? Apart from that, at what point do you think... after the abolition of slavery and whatnot, and the KKK formation or whatever, at what point would you say that Black Americans became ethno-nationalists, if at all?
Again, I'm not qualified. That is beyond my ken to make that kind of. Can I just say quickly? Can we do this next year after Schiffer goes on his presents his evidence? Yeah. Let's start looking at, because Shaka's going to run in circles for as long as we permit him. Yeah, let's look at what other. So, for instance, let's say KKK, right? Like, they advocate on behalf of their people. They're based on race, right? They're fundamentally, in their opinion, a Christian movement, right? They believe some of these perspectives are divinely prescribed or whatever, right? Now we can say that's definitely not representative of Pan-Africanism. That's a clear dissimilarity, right? And then we can also use other evidences to say that's similar to some ethnic nationalist groups support that kind of KKK view, some don't, whatever. And we can say, but is that a common property amongst all ethno-nationalist ideologies? No, like Christianity, for instance. And is that a common property amongst all Pan-African ideologies? No, right? Some are Muslim, some are irreligious, so on and so forth.
That's what I was saying from the very beginning, bro.
This would be an example. This would be an example that just refutes the stupidity and absurdity of his point about, well, they all advocate on behalf of. No one's saying that. No one's using that as the commonality amongst them. No, we're saying that it's more similar than dissimilar based on its utilization of particular argumentation. For instance, globalists. I know one of them. Globalists argue for everything. Some might even argue they're they subscribe to scientism because they argue on all of the fundamental sort of consensuses that exist about race and race realism and so on and so forth, about how that is inaccurate to group human beings like that, and therefore there should be a stateless society and so on and so forth, right? They could be the one I know particularly. He advocates for a capitalist view, not a non-communist globalist state, a stateless society or a one sort of hegemonic state, so on and so forth. And that's not racial, that's not ethnically sort of defined, so on and so forth, right? Now that is clearly fucking different. That would be clearly different to your Pan-African ideology. It shares one similarity, right? It shares the same similarity in that there's no borders in Africa, but then they're saying there's no borders globally, right? And Pan-Africanism isn't saying there's no borders globally, it's saying there's no borders within Africa. Now you can say, all right, based on that one similarity, is there more dissimilarity than similarity? Of course. Of fucking course there is. That's how we would.
All I would say, because Schiffer's got to go, yeah. All I would say,
last statement, I promise. No one's prepared to do an honest appraisal because literally it substantiates my point. It's just such an emotional argument. These are always emotional arguments.
Yeah, bro. You're being emotional, right? Because the fact of the matter is, yeah. Anyway, I've been saying
you're being emotional.
I've been saying from the very beginning we have to probe into the actual principles of the ideology. That's been my argument from the very beginning. So we'll do that right after Schiffer shares his evidence.